some of the takeaways I've learned from you is just have these big goals. Write them down, like physically write them down, take those little micro breaks, understand the whole process of learning. Because if you don't understand that, you don't know where you are.
That's right.
If you know where you are, you can set that expectation. And again, just reward yourself. Like just, it's a pretty cool journey. What's going on, everyone? Michael Siervo here, and welcome to another episode of Ready, Set, Sell, the greatest sales podcast in the universe. My name is Michael Siervo, and I'm your host today. And along with me is my very capable, awesome entrepreneur extraordinaire co-host, Mr. Donny Wong.
What's up, sales world? Welcome back for season 2.
Welcome back. This never gets old, eh?
Well, you know what, Michael? Now that we're filming season 2 in the studio, I gotta admit, we got this air of arrogance to ourselves.
Oh, just a little bit.
When we show up to the studio now.
I don't know if it's the arrogance, but it's not hubris, confidence. Right?
Right.
But confidence comes in so many different ways, and confidence does lead when you're winning into what's called a win streak. Now,
damn right.
The interesting thing, Donnie, is according to Wikipedia, a win streak is actually, I think it's 4 or 5 consecutive games.
Really?
That you've won. Yeah, the definition of a win streak. 4 or 5. I think it's 4 or 5, one of those. But we've seen a lot of win streaks. You're a big sports fan. I'm a big sports fan. We saw Khabib. What was his win streak? 29?
Oh, something. Yeah, 29.
29. Rocky Marciano's 47 wins. Wow. Undefeated, 47.
Well, Mayweather 50-0.
50-0, yeah. Yep. 50-0. So that's a crazy win streak. But, when you fast forward it or relate that into our world as salespeople, we have win streaks too. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about how to turn a win streak into the new norm.
Yeah, and the reason why this came up for you folks out there is because I recently joined I've been part of a sales organization for about 18 months. Previous to that, I was doing a lot of entrepreneurship, doing my own businesses, but joined this organization and did inbound sales, specifically what they call high ticket inbound sales. So I've actually never done sales over the phone before. Strictly calls, and one call closes if at all possible. But what I have done is coached for many, many years. So I took all the tools, all the same coachings and teachings, and really recorded my entire journey from day one to the point where most recently I had a 10-week win streak.
Nice.
Where did about, in the 10 weeks generated about what an average person's annual salary would be in the course of just about 2 weeks there.
Yeah. It was like a nice, fairly large 5-figure income in a span of, 10 days?
10 days would be great. It would be more.
A month?
I think when I calculated, it was about 10 weeks in total.
So, that's interesting because all of us, we want to have that win streak. There's that sense of like accomplishment and we want to continue that. So first of all, how did that start? Like, how did you stumble accidentally on a win streak and like, wait a second, I'm doing something, this is good. Or was it an intentional thing? Like, how did it start, first of all?
I've already recognized this. I've done all kinds of different sales in my entire life. I've only done sales roles for the last 20 years since I started working. So I kind of know the cycle. And so first and foremost, when you're getting into a new type of sale, just prepare to suck. And that's fine. So the first thing I did, and by the way, this is again, a 100% commission job. So for anyone who's thinking or getting into a 100% commission job, what I usually do is give yourself some sort of buffer, like a 2 to 3 month buffer, so you can learn the processes.
Right.
Even if you're a very seasoned sales professional like I wasn't, delusional to think I'm going to come in here and smash it. Although I'll always tell myself that, the inner speak. But when you get in there, 2 to 3 months of a buffer is really important because it gives you time to learn the processes correctly without having your back up against the wall. So you're not going to feel too much of the pressure up front, which is going to hinder you from learning it the right way. So that's what I did first and foremost. I had my business that was paying the bills. So for the first 3 months, there was no pressure. I just told myself, just learn, play around with it as much as you can, and just try and learn a piece every single day. So first off, setting it up properly, setting up an environment where it could fail successfully was huge to start the momentum going.
Yeah, I think that's so important because we need to have an on-ramp onto this, super highway that we're on, right? You have to on-ramp even if it's working out. I have a 15-minute on-ramp where I think within that 15 minutes, there are certain things I need to do so that when it's showtime, we're ready to go. Because the worst thing is that if you don't have an on-ramp, if you don't have a buffer and something happens, because something will always happen.
Always.
it can easily throw you off and give you an excuse to be like, I don't want to do it today. I don't want to make that extra call today. I don't want to go into the office. So that's great. I love the fact that you gave yourself, was it 3 months, you said?
Yeah, I gave myself 3 months.
And would you say that's like the typical, like in a sales process, we should be giving ourselves 3 months or like a month or so? Or
I think so. I think especially if you're already have a lot of sales experience, it's generally going to follow the same type of tools, all the same tools, all the same skills. They always translate, but there's the nuances, right? The tonality is different. The way, how much pressure you can put in when is very, very different. Small ticket sales, maybe fast sales cycles, you can put a whole lot of different types of pressure. Whereas with, say, a long sales cycle, you can't put pressure. It's a slow game, and you got to know when to insert it. So again, it seems very cerebral, kind of pie in the sky, but for the sales professionals, they understand at the highest level, it's not as tactical. Only in the beginning. So the first 3 months, very tactical. After that, it's very much about the finer artistry of the sale.
And would you say that is the initial thing? Is that's the foundation? You're building the foundation, the building blocks on top of that. And I guess that's how you build momentum, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. How I always think of it is there's really 4 stages of learning. Cool. And in the first stage, it's just all about playing. You just don't know what you don't know. So go out there and have fun, right? So in the first stage, I'm always just thinking about having fun. Let me try and break this. Let me try and explore it. Give me your scripts, give me your tools, whatever. But I'm just going to go out there and just try to just learn it in the most funnest way possible. But once you know what you don't know, so now I'm starting to drop calls. I'm starting to hit the objections. Now I'm going to think about into the second stage, which by the way, the first stage of learning is called unconscious incompetence. In other words, you just don't know how bad you are. You don't know. Which is fine. But once you start getting the scripts, the practice, you're starting to hit these points where like, I can't, this question doesn't work for me for some reason. They keep getting mad when I ask this question this way. Those little fine-tuned things, you're going to move into what's called conscious incompetence. You know you suck, and you know where you suck. So in this stage, this is now where I start practicing. This is where practice is so important, right? The father of learning. And I'm going to start deliberately practicing whatever it takes to move that person one step further. So it's usually maybe it's just getting the pitch out. Can I get it right without getting hung up on, without making the putting the customer on their heel, defensive mode already. Okay, once I clear the pitch, okay, where can I go through the discovery stage? How do I start forming these questions correctly so I have an easier way into the solutions, the problems, the qualifying, whatever the heck it is. But that's what it is. I want to map out this little process until when I'm starting to close deals. That's when I'm going to move into, stage 3, conscious competence, which means you know what you're doing. You probably put up some good numbers, but it takes all of your focus and concentration. It needs you at your A game to put up great numbers until finally you move into stage 4, unconscious competence. That's where you can hit flow.
That's mastery, essentially.
Right.
I find that the second stage of learning, that's where the most growth happens. And then in the third stage, it's tiny incremental things, the minute details that become better and better. But in that second stage, you see this massive growth. All of a sudden, you're getting your flow, you're getting your processes in place, and then in that third stage, you become an expert almost, right? And then it becomes mastery, right? The fourth one.
I got a theory on that, and it's because in the stage 2, it's all about discovery still. So because you're discovering, you're learning so much, you get those huge gains. And the third stage is because that actually takes the longest. From being proficient in something to mastery, well, some people take 100 years, right? Monks meditate their whole life, become masters of peace of mind and being complete detachment. All-star chefs will work 10, 15 years to earn the Michelin star, which is regarded as their type of mastery, right? The mastery of a culinary experience. We have these types of athletes now. When we talk about masters of the game, oftentimes the legends, the GOATs, the Jordans, the Tysons, sorry, not the Tysons, the Tigers rather, they've done this since birth. Michael Jackson, same thing. They have known this, nothing but this since birth. So when we hit stage 4, what I kind of see, especially in salespeople, is there's ebbs and flows, right? And eventually you're going to hit your stage 3. And as a coach, I'm going to see how I can get them to stage 4, keep them there. And then when they dip back down to a 3, okay, perfect. I'm going to coach them a little bit different. And then if they go into a sales slump, we'll talk about a completely different show. When they just crash, they're going to dip back down to stage 2. How do I get them through it?
Yeah, I like that you're talking about that, the ebbs and flows, and it's really understanding that it's not going to be a linear growth. Like, understand that exactly what you're saying. Understand it's going to suck. so that when it does hit, you're like, okay, I mentally prepared myself. This is the time when I need to ramp up, or I need to put a little bit more effort, because it might not get that easy. Just because a team, what is it? I think it was the Lakers. They won like 27 straight games, something like that. Or I know Houston Rockets in 2008, they won like 22 straight games, something like that. They had Yao Ming. Come on, the guys, 7-4, right? They dominated 22 straight games. Not every game was easy. Right?
Absolutely not.
But they won it.
That's right.
And I think that is a good analogy, that even though you have good days, with micro, when you break down within that day, you could have some tough stuff. So, Donny, tell me a little bit about now you have your foundation. Talk to me about the execution, the actual execution of the habits that you're forming. You alluded to a little bit more, the tiny incremental growth. But what are you actually doing as a salesperson that, regardless if we are selling cars, insurance, real estate, that every salesperson should be doing as a habit?
Yeah. First and foremost, you have to keep track of your stats. Whether your CRM or your own company's platform, maybe your manager is, you have to keep track of it yourself, and keep it as simple as possible. Unless you're just some sort of, super brain statistician, that's how you think.
Right.
I'm not that guy. I'm the opposite of that guy. So what I learned was to keep very simple spreadsheets, and just to always have at least how many doors or calls, how many doors I knocked or calls I did, how many people picked up. So how many attempts, how many contacts, how many pitches, how many presentations did I actually do? And then of those, the show up rates of those pitches, how many of those did I close? And if I didn't close, I don't really care about why I didn't close them too much. I will keep track of it, but that's basically what I want to always cover. I want to cover every point of the sale itself, every stage, every touch point, if you will. And what will happen is when you're first doing this, it actually will have, you don't have enough data. So I'm not really going to pay attention to it. It's just part of my wind down process. I want to record all this. On the macro, however, when I start looking back, I can start seeing trends. And that's what will get really important as we start moving forward. But in the beginning, for every salesperson, you have to take note of your sales stats. Every single day, don't miss a day.
Yeah, I think if you can't measure it, how can you improve on it, right? We become reactive to our environment. You want to control that environment. James Clear has this great example in his book, Atomic Habits. He says, for a salesperson, one of the best insurance sales guy, one of his examples is he had a little cup of marbles, and his goal was to move all of those marbles into that cup. The only way to do that is every call represented a marble. So you're visually seeing the transfer, and all of a sudden, maybe you're tired, but you see, oh geez, I'm 5 more marbles away and then I'm done. That's awesome, right? And I think what you really want to see is progress, and you're building that momentum. So let me ask you a quick question. We've heard this as salespeople, BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. You have your big, hairy, audacious goals, which ultimately should be driving you to build this momentum. Like, how do you set these goals, and how do you keep that, as your North Star, your guiding light that you keep moving towards?
I love this because goal setting is something that I just really enjoy doing. And over the years, I've just found different mechanisms that really work for me. BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. First off, I'm going to write it down. Yeah. So you have to write it down and not type it out, guys. Actually write it out. So actually, I have a notebook that I've had since 2011. I have a notebook that I've been writing in, and every year I set my goals in this, and it's all tattered and dog-eared. But again, capturing your mindset in that year, that time, it's so fun when you look back at it. It's the one thing I find that it pays dividends the longer time that you separate yourself from writing those initial times. So in the big, hairy, audacious goal for this, I wrote down exactly, first off, what is the goal? What is the checkpoint? But then the second thing I'm going to write down is, what am I willing to give up to achieve this goal? And I always give up 3 things. It's important to give up for me because you're going to run into times when it's going to be challenging to you. There's going to be certain things, and you don't want to give up everything necessarily unless you're really going for something extreme. But, if we're talking about a marathon, your big, hairy, audacious goal for life, you got to figure out, okay, what am I willing to give up? So when I usually give up things like, maybe I won't go drink for a month. Okay, no social events this year. Or maybe it'll be, maybe I'll just give up candy. I'll give up sugar. Maybe I'll give up, don't stay up late, right? So have to be in bed by 11. All these different little things, but what's important is that when it comes down to a point where it's me versus my willpower, I don't want to be in that situation. So I'm going to already decide which things my non-negotiables. So if it's between, okay, I have to get this sale done, finish today's sales, or I have to go to the gym. If in that year I said I'll give up the gym, that's one less decision for me to make. Right. And for that part, okay, well, sales wins this time.
Yeah. You have less decision fatigue, I suppose.
Exactly.
Right? And I think that's really powerful, because anyone who's ever achieved any type of success they had to sacrifice something.
Bingo.
And I think the fact that you are identifying that goal, but also what I've found is, if I'm going to do an action, I ask myself the question, is this going to move me forward, or is it just either neutral or moving me back? Right? I always think that I want to make decisions that move me forward. So if I'm gonna go out and have drinks with friends, what are we going to be talking about? How long are we going to be out there? Or can I network? Whatever it might be. Maybe your goal is to develop deeper relationships with friends. Who knows what it might be? But when you have that big, hairy, audacious goal, everything should be aligned to move forward towards that goal. And that's how you build that momentum. The other thing I'd also say, Donny, is and you talked about this, is track everything. I always think it's really important to celebrate the small little successes. Right? We think about that big, hairy, audacious goal, but moving those little marbles and finishing that cup is quite powerful.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a big problem with that. I don't celebrate enough. In fact, my problem that I know, especially with this time, because again, I was keeping track of everything, I noticed that every time I came close to hitting my milestone, even if by the time I was 60% of the way there, I already pushed the next milestone ahead. Right. It's just a natural reaction. But I noticed that, especially when I was on this journey, it wasn't healthy, because I would hit my goal and I wouldn't celebrate it. And so for those of you guys out there who hustle culture, grind culture, it's never good enough. It's important, to your point, Michael, set those little mini milestones and celebrate them along the way. It proves to yourself that you're worth it, and that it's worth celebrating, and enjoy the process, enjoy the journey as you're on the way there. There's this quote, sorry, just this thought, but it was, I heard this quote, which is, the man who loves walking will get farther than the man that enjoys the destination.
That's powerful.
We've heard this so many different ways, but that's the one that stuck with me. And that's why I think, especially this time around, I really started celebrating the mini goals there.
And the great thing is, when you do hit that roadblock and you're close to losing momentum, you could easily look back and be like, hey, I did this before. I celebrate the successes. I used to have a gratitude journal, and I would write all the things that I'm very grateful for, so that when I lose the momentum, I just want to give up. I look back and I'm like, wow, I'm thankful for this, this, and this. And all of a sudden, hey, maybe psychologically you get that energy again. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the gratitude journal is one of the most powerful tools you can have. But when I talk about writing your yearly goals, your BHAGs, it's important to write them all in the same book, because now when I look back at goals I was setting 5 years ago, it's incredible that, holy cow, I am that man.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I was really stuck, or maybe down in the dumps, or those times when nothing's working, go back in the journal, look at it, and say, holy cow, 2 years ago, the stuff I was working on, I'm already there and ahead. So cut yourself some slack, keep going, head up, champ.
The other one that I would recommend, if you are a salesperson and you're trying to build that momentum, I find that there's certain times of the day where you could really accomplish a lot. Mornings, easily one. In the morning, you're clear, less distractions. But one strategy, I'm curious if you do this. I do this as a salesperson. I know a lot of people do it, as the Pomodoro technique. And it's really, when you look at it, most people get a lot of motivation at the beginning of the year. They start working out. Come June time, most 50% or more than 50% have stopped working out. By the time December, it's like 10% are still working out. And I think if we keep resetting and imagine if the New Year's was every month and we have the same type of zest and energy, that builds that momentum. So are you doing the Pomodoro technique at all?
Not until I started 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
Because you do it so much. Yeah. And so the problem was, with sales work, I have a different type of pace. I have a different type of rhythm. But where it helps me most is administrative work. Yeah. So for my company, the property management company, I'm not good at admin. I don't really enjoy admin. It doesn't energize me in any way. So in other words, if it doesn't energize me, it drains me.
Right.
So I started having some troubles getting through a full day. And I remembered you always talking about the Pomodoro technique. Started it 2 weeks ago, and that was the fix.
Right.
So we're now I'll go for 45 minutes to an hour. I have the timer on, and that really helped me get rid of the distractions, because when it's draining you and you're disinterested, likely you're also going to start it eats up so much more of your willpower.
Yes, willpower.
To stay in the pocket and play the game properly. So what's happening is I could tell I was just getting distracted all the time. I'm trying to, you know, I have 7 different windows open. I'm deleting emails in the middle of the morning for no reason. And I remember Pomodoro. So 45 minutes to an hour, and I work. It helps me to keep all distractions at bay. And once that ringer hits, I just get up and take a walk or do whatever it is. It's worked really, really well.
Yeah, I started with 25 minutes, and it was 25 minutes, and then it was like 5 to maybe 7 minutes of a bit of a break. I would just rest my eyes, look forward, and then you do that again, and you try to do at least 4 Pomodoros. So each of those sections are called Pomodoros.
Gotcha.
Now I'm at about 50 minutes with a 10-minute break, so it's 60-60-30. That's a technique Eben Pagan has popularized.
60-60-30, got it.
60-60-30, and what he said is 50 minutes, you focus on something with a lot of focus, 10-minute break, and then after another 50-minute break, 10-minute break, so that's 2 hours, and then you have to have a 30-minute break, right? Really just to recharge your energy, refocus, and then you go back at it, or you switch gears. But that 2.5 hours was so powerful that you've built some momentum throughout the day. Now, if you do that every single day, you know, do it 5 or 6 times a week, got a pretty strong week. And if you do it 3 times a month, you know, it's a pretty good month. 7 times a year, 7 months of a year, you got a winning year.
There's something I used to do called a sprint, where I used to shut out the entire world, and you would see me almost like training for the Olympics, or fight camp is a great example of that.
Great example.
But the problem was I used to go 3 months straight of a sprint, and it was too much. It was too intense for too long with 0 breaks. So I started shortening down that to 2 months. And it had a pretty good effect. But I think this year going forward, 2023, I'm going to try for 1 week out of every single month, sprint for the entire week. Because I can sprint for a week, no problem, but it's almost like a macro Pomodoro.
Right. And I think when you bring that up, it's quite important to mention that, because the whole premise of this podcast was to turn momentum into a winning habit, to turn a win streak into a winning habit, and to make it the new norm. I think when we get so intense, it's very difficult to do that. Just like a diet. I mean, you're going to do a diet, you fall off of it. But if you could turn it into a habit, make it so easy to do. Like, it's not that hard to focus for 25 minutes to 50 minutes and get up and, like, you know, go for a nice walk the dog, stretch. It's not that hard. But people put so much pressure. They're like, I got to work for 10 hours straight. Great. You might be able to do that for a couple of months, but continuing to do that over a span of a year, that's a negative momentum.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like, momentum can go both ways.
That's right.
So you want to have those positive habits, make it so easy that it's undeniable. I always tell people reward themselves, and that, like, whether it's I'm gonna have a popcorn or something, I'm gonna have a bowl of popcorn because I worked out for 6 straight days. Reward yourself.
You know, it's funny. Anchoring is a big thing too. With exactly. And I started reading 2023. I always start my habits for the next year early to build a habit to go in. But one of my big ones this year is I'm going to read minimum 30 pages a day.
Yeah.
And I always try and think, well, I need to start cutting out the snacks, because you and me talk about this 2023, we're getting jacked. Here we go. We're going to hit the gym hard. Yeah. So what I started doing was, okay, no snacks unless you're reading. So the only time I'm going to be having any sort of sugar is only when you're reading. And so now I know if I'm going to read 30 pages, well, shut everything off, have a seat, grab your snack. And it's just so funny, because you're rewarding yourself for doing something you want to do. And it's this beautiful positive feedback loop. That really, it's less about the dopamine, which is normally what we're
you're trying to get
right, that drug, that short-lived dopamine. And I find it's almost more serotonin now, because once I do this, I'm rewarding a good habit for something I want to produce. I feel so much better about almost life by the time I've done those 30 pages.
Yeah, because you realize it's doable, right? It's doable. So I think some of the takeaways I've learned from you is just have these big goals, write them down, like physically write them down, take those little micro breaks, understand the whole process of learning. Because if you don't understand that, you don't know where you are.
That's right.
If you know where you are, you can set that expectation. And again, just reward yourself. Like, just, you know, it's a pretty cool journey. And if that journey could be a positive one that could be sustained over time, that, I believe, can create that win streak.
Yeah. And here's the big thing too, because when you, especially in my role, it was it's inbound closing, right? For a digital company. So it's the first sales job I ever had where I was solo.
Right.
So relatively no help. You're on your own. You're basically a man on an island. So for those who are amateurs, maybe they won't do so well because they don't have that sales prowess to get them through an entire market cycle. Whereas with myself, again, 20 years in sales, I knew what was going to happen. So why those habits are important is because, like we said before, right, gets rid of decision fatigue. But the other way around is that the compounding.
Yes.
As these habits are starting to click together, you start putting in these high performance habits without having to think about them. They just become part of your routine. And then finally, when you're keeping track of your data, when you can look back, you can really start spotting trends. Because again, if you're a solo, if you're a lone wolf out there, so a lot of times this would be, say, realtors, pretty solo, any sort of sale when you're not in a sales environment. I think you're kind of the same as well. Keeping track of your own stats is so important because you can always see what's going through your life, and spotting the trends is really important because I can start seeing, holy cow, for the last 6 days, I haven't closed anything. That's a long time for a short sales cycle, right? And so it's easy sometimes when I look back and say, actually, this just happened to me, I think last week, where I was like, man, that was a slow week. What happened? But when I look back over my weekly stats, I was closing at a high percentage. Just turns out that the show rate was so low.
Right.
So the appointments weren't showing up, but my closing rate was high. Instantly, okay, hey, don't worry, it wasn't you. It's the show rate. Let's go work on the show rate.
Yeah.
And that type of forensics of your own sales stats brings clarity. So you know what problem to solve, where to tweak the machine as you're moving forward.
Yeah, it's so powerful when you think about that, because when you can look back and identify where you made a mistake and then see that trend, things are fixable. Unless, for the most part, life for the most part can be fixed, and we can pivot and adjust accordingly. And I think it's really important for us as salespeople to be able to see that, right? I mean, we're so focused on a goal, but have those little micro goals. Find out if we're falling off, what is it that's causing us to fall off, and then build that momentum again.
That's right. That's right. Clarity precedes mastery. And another big one is work for the momentum, not for money.
Oh, that's so good.
That's what I found. And to come really full circle, how I knew that I was actually going on this hot streak was, it wasn't a fluke. I didn't fall into a hot streak. Right. I completely manufactured it. Yeah. So I saw in the calendar when was going to be the perfect month. We get salespeople mostly get paid weekly. This was no different. And I saw, you know what? There's 3 months every year where there's 5 weeks of a pay cycle. So this was October, and I was like, okay, this is it. The timing's right. So went through everything we talked about, set my goals. What are the 3 things I'm going to give up in the month of October? So when I get faced with those things, no decision. I'm going to focus on the work. Then I looked at my stats. So I based my stats for a good 14 months. I know if I want to hit a certain number, I have to get this many calls per week. However I divvy them up, it doesn't matter. I just got to hit this volume of calls because I know a certain number won't show up.
Right.
I know I will always close a certain amount, which means I should end with a certain amount. And so what happened was when October came, I knew, okay, I'm focused on this. This is my priority for the month of October, is going to be hitting this PR. What ended up happening was the residual from that month. So we crushed that month, and it was I broke 3 personal records in that month alone. But the residual from the momentum, from all the habits, from everything I had set up, I actually beat my own records the following month in November.
Oh, no way.
So I beat my records for October, which was great, but the carry forward momentum went into November and broke every single record I already set in October.
Which is amazing, because it's usually when the momentum starts that's the most difficult. Once you're pushing that car, pushing that wheel or that rock up a mountain, once that momentum happens, it gets easier because that's when a habit is established.
That's right.
Essentially, we want excellence to be the habit. But there you have it. Man, that was wonderful. That was the fastest podcast ever in terms of going through some of these amazing habits. So what do you guys think? I mean, what are your tricks and tricks of the trade that help you get momentum? Maybe share a story on what you've done to be able to create that win streak, but not only create it, maintain it. Because ultimately, Donny, that's what we really want to do, is create multiple win streaks and eventually make that into a habit.
For you guys out there, if you would like to know more about the details, Michael and I are really committed on how can we help you guys even more. If you gain value from the show, but maybe, hey, you guys went over that a little bit too fast. How could we help you more? Write into us, leave us a DM if there's something we could make, if there's something we could create, maybe there's something we could systemize this for you so you can learn faster. Write us, let us know. We read and respond to every single comment.
Awesome. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Ready, Set, Sell, when we talked about habits and building momentum and how to turn a hot streak into the new norm. Thank you so much, Donny. Good luck, everyone out there. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.